3 spine-chilling true tales of sinister figures lurking outside revealed and haunted secrets in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Chicago. Sarah had always thought of her home as a sanctuary. At 34, the single mother of 2, Mia and Tommy, poured every ounce of her heart into creating a sense of safety and happiness for her children. But as darkness descended each evening, shadows began to creep across her well-defined world. There it stood, just beyond the glow of her porch light, a dark figure in a hooded sweatshirt, unmoving, waiting. A heartbeat raced in her ears. Was it just a trick of the light, or was this eerie presence watching her every move? Panic twisted in her gut, but life was a relentless blur. She couldn't afford to think about it now. Days turned into weeks, and the figure became a nightly fixture. An irrational part of her mind whispered it was just exhaustion-induced paranoia. But that nagging instinct, the one that kept her up at night, shouted otherwise. One evening, she confided in her neighbors, hoping they'd offer her some reassurance. Instead, they exchanged uneasy glances, laughter ringing hollow as they slowly retreated, closing their blinds with deliberate care. Were they hiding something? Every glance and nod made her insides churn. Things escalated when anonymous notes began appearing on her doorstep, each one more chilling than the last. One detailed a trip to the grocery store, specifying the bright yellow dress Mia wore and the blue shirt Tommy loved. Sarah's breath hitched. Goosebumps crawled across her arms as her once familiar world twisted into an all-consuming web of dread. Her neighborhood, filled with friendly faces at block parties, suddenly felt like a labyrinth of suspicion. Who was watching? Who could have known? In her desperation, she started to dig into her neighborhood's past. What she uncovered sent a shiver down her spine. Faded newspaper articles whispered of children going missing, a string of unresolved cases linked by a sinister thread. And at the center of it all stood Mr. Anderson, the charming community leader, the man everyone adored. Seemingly innocent, yet eerie whispers surrounded him when she dared to ask about the past. Her heart thundered in her chest as she imagined what lurked beneath that pleasant facade. Each day her fear intensified. Late-night investigations led her deeper into shadows, much to the discomfort of her neighbors who faltered at her inquiries, exchanging anxious looks that spoke volumes. They were a collective silence, almost as if they knew they were unwitting players in a much darker game. Then, one fateful evening, as Sarah stood in her kitchen preparing dinner, the lights flickered ominously. Heart racing, she hurried to the window, her breath catching in her throat. There it was again, the figure, cloaked in darkness, positioned just beyond the reach of the weak glow of the streetlight. She gripped the counter tightly, knuckles white. Everything in her screamed to confront it, to demand answers. But fear held her back, threading doubt through her thoughts. Before she could decide, her phone buzzed to life on the counter. A new message blinked ominously on the screen. "I see you, Sarah. I know what you're hiding." Panic washed over her, icy waves crashing into her resolve. Was the figure connected to Mr. Anderson? She felt a desperate need to protect her children, to uncover this treacherous mystery before it snuffed out their light. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As dread settled like a heavy fog, Sarah's mind raced through the implications. She hesitated, her heart pounding harder than ever. The figure outside wasn't just a looming shadow, it was a threat, a ticking clock counting down to an unknown horror. She could either pull the door open and step into a whirlwind of terror or stay behind her locked door, and pray the nightmare would go away. But could she really ignore the mounting evidence? Would that decision seal their fate? As her fingers trembled above the doorknob, a question loomed larger than the dark. Was this just the beginning of something far worse? With a shaky breath, Sarah turned back to the window, transfixed by the figure outside. The streetlight flickered, casting an unsteady glow that highlighted the sharp contours of the person's hood. The wind rustled the nearby trees, but it felt as if everything else had fallen into an unnatural silence. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Would it even answer? Each second stretched like an eternity. The figure didn't stir, didn't even twitch. Sarah's heart drummed louder in her chest. Was it waiting for her to make the first move? Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging her kitchen into darkness for a split second. When they returned, the figure had taken a step closer, now almost within reach of the porch. Panic surged like ice through Sarah's veins. She stumbled backward, nearly tripping over her own feet, before righting herself. What did it want? Then, her phone buzzed again, vibrating violently against the counter. In her frenzied state, she snatched it up, praying for an escape route in the form of a message from a friend or family. But as she opened the screen, a chill swept through her. There was another notification. "I know about the neighbor. You shouldn't ask questions." She staggered back, her breath coming fast. Who was this? Did they know about her research? A sharp knock broke the silence. It resonated through her like a thunderclap, echoing in her mind. "Sarah!" A voice called from outside, the charmer from across the street, Mr. Anderson himself. "I saw someone lurking. Are you all right?" His voice was calm, almost comforting, but something inside her screamed to stay away. Could she trust him? Was he even who he claimed to be? She hesitated, glancing once more at the figure outside. It stood still, as if frozen in time. "Mia! Tommy!" she yelled, panic edging her words. "Get upstairs. Now!" The sound of their hurried footsteps echoed behind her as they complied. Just as they disappeared from sight, Mr. Anderson knocked again, voice dripping with feigned urgency. "Sarah, please. Open the door. We have to talk. There's someone dangerous out here." Terror wedged deep inside her. Who could she trust? She recalled the articles she'd read about Mr. Anderson, the glow of community praise, yet a shadow of suspicion that clung to him like dark smoke. Would he protect her children or put them in more danger? The figure shifted. Presently, it raised a hand, concealing its face in shadow. A chilling breeze swept through the house, wrapping around her like a ghostly embrace. Sarah's gaze darted to the door. How much time did she have before it all unraveled? "Please, Sarah." Mr. Anderson called again, his voice now tinged with paranoia. "You need protection. I can help you." A smell of rot mixed with the crisp evening air, and her stomach churned. She fought against instinct, gripping the doorknob, the cold metal digging uncomfortably into her palm. Should she open the door to safety or succumb to the rising dread that urged her to lock it tight? The night deepened as Sarah wrestled with the abyss of doubt consuming her. The choice lay heavy, still and unyielding. Then, from behind her, a soft whisper pierced the air, cold and clear. "Mom, please don't let him in." Her breath caught in her throat. Mia's voice echoed through the trepidation inside, reminding her of what she had to protect. Yet, just outside the door, the figure stepped forward, still shrouded in darkness, like a predator cloaked in night. She turned back to the door, heart thundering. The world around her vibrated with an unseen tension. And just as the figure raised a chilling finger to the doorbell, the question crashed over her like an icy wave: was there anyone left she could truly trust? With a deep breath, she prepared to act, her fate hanging in the balance. What lay beyond the door? And what unspeakable horror awaited if she didn't confront it now? The moment stretched, every heartbeat thundering like a war drum in her ears. Sarah's instincts screamed at her, "Lock the door." This wasn't just about her. Mia and Tommy were upstairs, oblivious to the danger lurking outside. "Mom." Mia's voice trembled, quiet and urgent. The figure hovered at the threshold, its silhouette deepening against the light. It was searching for a way in. Compelled by terror, Sarah stepped back, her heart racing. Would Mr. Anderson truly help her, or had he cooked up an elaborate deception? A soft breeze swirled around her, bringing with it a reek of decay. It clawed at her senses, making her throat convulse. There was something wrong, deeply, darkly wrong. She called back to Mia, trying to sound steady. "Stay where you are. I'll handle it." With each word, she struggled to compose herself. Her eyes darted between the door and the window, the icy fingers of dread creeping further into her thoughts. "Sarah." Mr. Anderson's voice cut through. "Time is running out. If you don't let me in, that thing will get you." The panic laced in his tone felt real, but should she believe him? The figure outside seemed to move in rhythm with the flickering streetlight, pulses of darkness merging and separating, like a predator stalking its prey. It raised its head slightly, revealing only darkened shadows where a face should have been. "Do you even care about your kids?" Mr. Anderson pressed, a desperate edge sliding into his pitch. "I'm the only one who can protect you from." Before he could finish, the door rattled as the figure thumped against it, an unsettling thud reverberating into the hallway. The sound twisted in her gut, instantly silencing Mr. Anderson. "Mom!" Tommy yelled from upstairs, a shriek filled with panic. "Stay upstairs!" She shot back, her voice firm despite the chaos swirling inside her. Each knock sent deep shivers through her bones. Adrenaline surged, making the world around her sharper but also darker. She needed to decide, and fast. Trust was a gamble one she could no longer afford. Her hand shook on the doorknob. The smell grew stronger, heavy and potent, invading her senses. It clawed at her composure. Was this the moment where indecision would cost her everything? "Sarah!" The figure hissed, a voice twisted and parched, breaking through the calm of the night. "Let me in. I know your secrets, they fear me for a reason." A chill shot down her spine. The figure seemed to know too much, and its tone sent dread spiraling through her. What secrets did it know? Suddenly, the lights flickered again. This time, they plunged the house into darkness completely. She couldn't see the figure anymore, but she felt it, a presence pressing against the door. "Sarah," the shadow called again, almost in her ear. "Choose." A breath caught in her chest. The tension wrapped around her like a vice. Every instinct screamed at her to escape, to run, but where could she go? Her phone buzzed again, sending a shocking jolt through her. She fumbled for it, hands trembling. Her screen lit up, and this time, a grinning face stared back at her. "You're never alone, Sarah. We're always watching you." Panic surged again. Heart racing, she shoved the phone into her pocket and spun towards the door. "Mom, please." Mia cried again, now sobbing, "Don't let him in." Desperation surged. She couldn't leave her children unprotected, yet every moment weighed heavy with uncertainty. Then, without warning, the door creaked open just a crack. The figure whispered, "It's only me, Sarah. It's time to face the truth." What truth? Fear ripped through her, the world narrowing to a singular moment of choice. As the door began to inch wider, the darkness pressed in, along with her unrelenting questions. Would revealing the truth bring her freedom or damnation? "Sarah!" came Mr. Anderson's voice like a distant echo, "Don't." With that, the moment snapped like a fragile thread. The next heartbeat would decide everything. What awaited her on the other side? And was the truth something she could truly bear? She couldn't breathe. A suffocating weight filled her chest, crushing her as she stood paralyzed at the door. The creak grew louder, the crack widening just enough to reveal a glimpse of shadow. It felt alive, writhing and twitching. "Sarah, I can help you." The whisper drew her in like a moth to a flame. The voice was the same one she recognized, yet it twisted her stomach in knots. "Mom!" Mia screamed, desperation bleeding into her voice. "Please. Don't open it." The words hit her like a slap. She clutched the edge of the door, fingers white-knuckled against the wood, as panic clawed its way up her throat. "Let me in." The figure urged again, more insistent this time. "This won't end well for you or your children." Her ears rang. She felt every cell in her body urging her to close the door, to lock it tight. But with each heartbeat, the darkness whispered promises that twisted into threats. "Sarah, you'll regret it if you don't." Her heart hammered. It was a name she remembered saying, once, in fragmented dreams. What she wouldn't give to wake up in her bed, where everything was normal. With every second, the weight outside threatened to spill inside her sanctuary, to engulf her and her children. "Mom!" Tommy's voice echoed again, his fear reverberating through the house. "We don't know what it is. Just don't open the door." Time clawed at her, pushing against her until she felt she would break. Did it know her secrets? Could it twist them into something vile? Every time she thought of opening that door, she remembered the feeling of someone watching her, always lingering just beyond her vision. "Your children won't understand, but I can help you. Just let me in." The shadows twisted, growing nearer. "No!" she shouted, suddenly emboldened. "Get away from my house." The words felt like a lifeline, a small glimmer of strength rising against the encroaching darkness. A guttural laugh rumbled in response. "You misunderstand, Sarah. I'm not outside your door. I'm inside your mind. You've invited me in long ago." Her stomach dropped. The implication struck deep, a chilling realization surfacing. What had she done before? What had she thoughtlessly welcomed into her life? As if in answer, the dark figure slipped backward slightly, melting into the shadows of the night. But the stench persisted, clinging to her, rotting and heavy. "Don't let it in, Mom!" Mia cried, her voice quaking with fear. "It's lying." It was more than just a voice. This was a part of her, the darkest corners she had buried beneath layers of denial and pretense. What if it was true? A horrifying thought slithered through. What truths lay locked inside her? With shaking hands, Sarah stumbled backward, crashing into the wall. She heard the door creak and saw the handle slowly reclaiming its status as it was pulled from outside, but not before a glinting shadow snaked through the crack. "Time's running out," it hissed, cold and merciless. "Open this door, and we can finally face what you dread." The door lurched again, agitated by something unseen. The rumbling outside morphed into a pounding, visceral assault against the wood. A primal instinct flooded her about who she was truly protecting, who she needed to guard. "Sarah!" Mr. Anderson roared, desperate. "You can't let it in. Trust me." But trust was unraveling, spinning into threads of doubt. She felt the weight of the figure's eyes on her head, a burden she couldn't bear. If she opened that door, would it consume everything she loved? "Mom!" Mia's voice broke through the chaos, a beacon in her spiraling thoughts. "Please. Don't let it take you." In that moment, a choice lay heavy in the air. The door quaked in its frame. The truth, if it existed, trembled on the other side. What lay beyond? Freedom or more darkness? Just as she braced herself to choose, the darkness surged. It surged like a tidal wave, and the door slammed open wider. What was waiting for her on the other side? Would it be the answer she feared or the end of everything? The door flung open with a violent creak. A rush of cold air flooded the room, carrying with it an unmistakable scent of decay. Sarah felt the chill crawl across her skin like icy fingers, and instinctively, she stepped back, pulling her children closer. Her instincts screamed at her, urging her to retreat further into the safety of her home. "Mom!" Tommy shouted again, his voice rising, now a mixture of horror and urgency. "Please. Close it." But in that moment, the dark figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, an indistinct silhouette barely breaking the threshold, its features obscured, yet its presence overwhelmingly tangible. It loomed, pulsating with an energy that seemed to blend with the shadows that wrapped around it. "Sarah," it drawled softly, a sickly sweet lure that sent shivers spiraling down her spine. The truth lies with me, your truth. Shut up. Mia yelled, her small frame trembling beside her mother. It's lying. Close the door. But the whispers grew louder, drowning out her daughter's pleas. Sarah's heart pounded against her chest, churning with doubt, swirling thoughts of long-buried memories clawing to the surface. What had she entangled herself in? Don't you want to know? The figure taunted, stepping slightly forward, shifting from the darkness. A glimmer of pale skin caught the light, followed by sad, hollow eyes that seemed to reach straight into her soul. Against every instinct, memories bloomed around her: a lost childhood, moments of anger, regret, shadows from her past weaving together into a sick tapestry. It was seducing her, a dark reflection of what she had avoided. No. She screamed, shaking her head. Get away. But it did not retreat. Instead, it leaned closer. We can confront it together, finally. All the pain, let me take you back to remember. Images sprouted in her mind, fragments of her past that she had tried so hard to forget, hushed voices, sorrow, isolation. Doors that had been shut tight in her memory began to creak open, splintering the fragile peace she had built after so many years. Mom! Tommy's voice sliced through the air again, panic rising to a fever pitch. Mom! It's not real. Don't listen to it. As reality wavered, the air hummed with tension. The creature's breath gusted across her face, sickening and fetid. Each word it uttered wrapped around her like chains, anchoring her to the moment. Then, in a desperate lunge, she reached for the door, her instincts surging in a protective frenzy. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, she yanked it closed, forcing the oppressive darkness back. Mom, lock it! Mia cried, eyes wide with terror. Lock it now! But as Sarah fumbled for the bolt, the shadows rippled just beyond the frame, taunting. If you don't let me in, how can you face what's truly waiting for you? It hissed, a voice darkened by malice yet filled with deceptive comfort. Every instinct screamed to lock it shut, but the wrestling doubt gnawed at her heart. What awaited her on the other side? Would she truly be safe or merely prolonging agony? Mom! Tommy took a cautious step forward, his small hand trembling. Please, we can get through this together. In that moment, under the weight of her children's eyes and the figure's wrath, Sarah felt the walls of her resolve beginning to crack. She could hear the echoes of her choices whispering promises of salvation or endless torment. What will you choose? The creature cooed from outside, a taunt laced with secrets and despair. The banging resumed against the door, rapid and relentless, merging into a single heartbeat of horror. Time felt suspended, stretched painfully thin. Suddenly, a piercing scream erupted from the dark beyond, echoing through the wood, shaking her to the core. It was a sound of anguish, a cry of lost souls, but was it the creatures or something far worse? Mom! Mia cried, clutching her tighter. What do we do? As Sarah's heart raced, she realized the door would not be the only thing that needed locking. A choice loomed heavy and dark. Was letting it in the answer to her questions, or would she be burying them deeper into the night? The seconds stretched into eternity as Sarah fumbled with the bolt, her fingers shaking violently. Fear constricted her chest like a vice. With every thump against the door, the creature outside seemed to grow in power, its taunting voice swirling through the air, mingling with her own doubts. Face me, Sarah. What do you really fear? Mom! Tommy's voice quivered. Please. We have to go. His words pierced through the oppressive fog wrapping around her, grounding her again in the reality of her children. She forced herself to breathe, to think, drowning out the creature's venomous whisper. This isn't real. She shouted, her voice feeling weak, a mere echo of her determination. You're just a trick. The banging warped into a rhythmic chant, thrumming in tandem with her racing heart. Let me in. Let me in. Mia's terrified gaze pulled Sarah back to her. What's outside, Mom? What if it's worse in here? A shiver ran down Sarah's spine at the thought. She glanced at the cracked door, the shadows fractured and writhing, and she closed her eyes for a moment, bracing herself. If she didn't act now, dread would swallow her whole. "Mom, lock it or get us out." Tommy's tears dripped to the floor. "Please." With a decision resolving amid her swirling fears, she turned the bolt, all her strength focused in a swift motion as she blocked the dark entity from breaching their sanctuary. The thumping ceased, replaced by suffocating silence that throbbed in her ears. And then the sound changed. The loud crash of something heavy hitting the door resonated through the wood, sending shockwaves of panic through the room. An eerie whisper curled in the air, this time dripping with venom. "You cannot hide from me, Sarah, I will always find you." The realization gripped her. This was more than a shadow. It was a harbinger, a curse echoing back to long-abandoned sins. With her heart drumming in her ears, Sarah spun to her children. "We need to go to the basement. Now." "Mom, that's where it started." Mia protested, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Trust me, it will be safer there." Sarah grabbed their hands, her heart pounding like a war drum, and bolted toward the staircase leading down into the darkness. The air in the entryway felt thick, pressing against her, as though it were trying to hold her back. The shadows stretched and twisted around them, whispering secrets that crawled beneath her skin. "Why there?" Tommy's voice quaked with fright. "Because it's south, the only place they can't reach us, not again." Fear clawed up her throat as she led them down the narrow steps, the wood creaking beneath their weight. Instinctively, she grasped the old light switch, but the light flickered ominously, a brief blinding glimpse into the suffocating dark before plunging them into shadow once more. "Mom." She could barely make out Mia's outline, but the fear lay heavy in the air. An icy breeze swept through the stairwell, brushing past them like a ghost's caress. "Stay close," Sarah urged, her voice trembling. Just then, the sound of something scraping against the door above sent jolts of terror through her. It was there on the other side. The thing they had locked out, the harbinger of old truths. With frantic eyes, Sarah shifted through their cramped surroundings, searching for something, anything. It would be dangerous to stay stagnant. The basement couldn't be a trap, but where was the exit? Suddenly, the metallic clang of a broken pipe echoed unnervingly from the far end, drawing them deeper into the shadows, beckoning them to uncover its secret. "Mom," Tommy whispered, voice barely a thread. What if before he could finish, the floor beneath them shuddered, and Sarah staggered? Something thudded heavily in the distance. The creature had not ceased its assault, it merely waited. "What if we go deeper?" Mia's voice trembled before fading into silence as a monstrous snarl rattled the door above, slamming against the frame again and again, relentless. "Eager. We have to find a way out before it gets in," Sarah shouted, feeling the weight of panic crashing against her chest. Her breath came in shallow bursts, as if the very shadows were willing the light away, and in that instant, she realized the choice was upon her again: flee deeper into the unknown where more darkness awaited, or confront the horrors she had been running from all her life. But something new stirred behind her. A low whisper echoed in the darkness, "Remember, it begins with you." Sarah's skin prickled with dread, and as they turned to find the source, she felt her resolve waver. What rushed toward them could change everything they thought they knew. What waited in the deeper shadows? The walls of the basement seemed to pulse with the weight of forgotten memories, and a chill swept through as if history itself pressed down on them. Sarah's heart raced as she gripped her children's hands tighter, trying to stave off despair. She could feel the shadows closing in, thick and suffocating, like a storm gathering strength. "Mia, stick close to me," she whispered, scanning the pitch-black corners where her imagination spurred a sinister silhouette. Tommy squeezed her other hand, his grip trembling, a silent plea hanging on the precipice of terror. The scraping from above grew louder, a steady, merciless rhythm, but its source remained hidden. Each thud seemed to come with a promise: it was patient, it was always patient. "Mom, what do we do now?" Tommy's voice quaked, a thin wisp of sound in the overwhelming darkness. "We'll find a way out," she replied, though the words tasted like ash on her tongue. A sharp clatter rang out again. The noise echoed, unnaturally loud, sending shocks through their bodies. What was that? Mia stammered, her eyes wide and reflecting pure terror. Just the pipes," Sarah said, hoping her voice conveyed more bravado than she felt. "We need to keep moving." "But where?" The space felt endless, a labyrinth of shadows and whispers, and in that moment, the walls seemed to close in. Every step forward echoed ominously as Sarah led them further into the basement, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Maybe we can find a window or a way up," Mia suggested, glancing back toward the stairs even as she moved. Sarah nodded, desperately searching for the familiar shapes among the murky darkness. The old furnace nestled in the corner loomed like a beast, but Sarah pressed on, each step feeling heavy, fraught with dread. Suddenly, a flicker. Just beyond a pile of old boxes a glint of something metallic caught her eye. Hope surged through her. "Over there." She pointed towards the light. But as they approached, the floorboards creaked violently beneath them, a chorus of disdain, and then the room trembled. Sarah's heart sank. "No!" she yelled, grabbing the kids as the sound escalated, drowning out her words. The ground was shifting, splintering beneath their feet. A howling wind erupted from a gaping crack in the wooden wall, ripping through the basement, shrouding them with shadows. A guttural growl erupted from the darkened corner, reverberating like thunder. Each pulse of sound ricocheted through the room, chilling Sarah's bones. The lights flickered overhead, dimming ominously, before plunging them into darkness once more. "Mom!" Tommy screamed, his voice a mix of panic and confusion, but Sarah barely heard him. She felt the surge of something ancient and wicked, a force that knew them intimately. They were not mere trespassers in this domain, they were its prey. "Stay together!" She howled above the chaos, feeling the weight of invisible eyes upon them. The cracking deepened, and the whispers climbed from some shadowy abyss, twisting her name into jagged syllables. "Sarah, it seeks you. You cannot escape." With every shaky breath, she battled the suffocating reality. "We'll find a way out," she repeated, even as her heart pounded ferociously, fluttering like a trapped bird, but then she saw it, a shape, just on the periphery of her vision. The shadows seemed to mold, reshaping into something grotesque, a hulking mass of darkness, with eyes gleaming like coals, an invitation to despair. Before she could react, it lunged, splitting the air with a haunting roar that seemed to echo from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Run!" In that moment, primal instincts took over. Sarah pulled the kids and dashed deeper into the unknown, where the shadows whispered and the unseen stalked. But she knew, in the prickling dread that shot down her spine, that there was nowhere to hide. What awaited them next lay deeper still, buried beneath layers of pain and fear, and the shadows were just getting started. As they fled, the air thickened, and she felt its grip tighten. The dark entities had only begun their relentless hunt. Would they ever escape this nightmare, or was this only the prologue to something far more terrifying? The darkness swallowed them whole, an all-consuming void where even fear felt muted, overshadowed by a deeper, gnawing dread. Sarah barreled through the basement, dragging her children behind her as the shadows reared up, alive and hunger-filled. "Mom, I'm scared." Mia's voice trembled, breaking through the escalating chaos. Sarah turned to reassure her, but before she could form the words, a sudden gust nearly knocked them off their feet. "Hold on." She tightened her grip, pulling them down a narrow passageway. The air was thick and cloying, suffocated by centuries-old dust. They stumbled, racing past old furniture, remnants of unlived lives, casting elongated silhouettes that danced against the walls like unnerving phantoms. The oppressive air sank into their lungs, stifling any rational thought, but the pounding in her chest sharpened her focus. Then, the growls surged again, more visceral this time, a deep, rumbling growl that melted away the residual echoes of the past. The sound morphed into terrifying whispers that pricked at the edges of her sanity. "Sarah, it knows it waits. Where are we going?" Tommy panted, eyes wide and frantic as they turned another corner. Every nerve in her body screamed for an answer, but she couldn't afford to think. Instincts took charge and pushed her forward. Just stay close. We'll find a way out. She shouted back, even though she felt the lies scrape her throat. She was leading them into the belly of some monstrous trap, and doubt gnawed at her resolve. Suddenly, a flicker of light broke through the darkness, warm and inviting against the chill that gripped them. Over there. A door. Mia pointed, excitement sparking through her fear, and Sarah's heart raced. They rushed towards it, hope igniting in the dim confines, but just as they reached the door, a heavy thud reverberated behind them. An unbearable pressure filled the space, pressing against them as they stumbled. Sarah turned, realizing with horror that the black mass loomed closer, relentless and determined. Those eyes, those hellish embers were locked on her. Go. Now. She screamed, pushing the kids forward, her own body acting as a shield as she felt the dark claw at her edges. The door swung open as if beckoning them, the bright corridor on the other side washing over them with all the warmth of the sun. They burst through, tumbling onto the floor of a long-abandoned room, dust motes swirling in the streams of light. Then Mia stopped, her eyes transfixed. Mom, look. On the far wall, a twisted mural, painted in shades of red and black, depicted scenes of anguish and despair. It told a story more gruesome than she could bear, figures trapped in a vortex of shadows, their eyes wide with horror. No. Not here. Not now. Don't look at it. She yanked Mia away, the pulse of dread amplifying as the growl echoed again, louder. Something behind them stirred. The darkness was relentless, it bled through the cracks of their sanctuary, infiltrating what little safety they thought they'd found. Mommy, what is happening? Tommy whimpered, clutching at her leg. The wall began to tremble, white tiles cracking, the mural appearing to writhe with sinister life. I don't know. Sarah shouted back, panic tightening around her throat. The fading sense of safety shattered. Stay close. A desperate shout escaped as she grabbed them, preparing to run again, the unseen force behind them more powerful, a coiled serpent ready to strike. Each breath of air grew heavier, laden with despair and the looming threat of darkness. A shadow shifted in the corner of her eye, not an illusion, not a game. Something was moving, preparing to strike. Run! She shrieked, flinging herself towards the far end of the room, breath catching in her throat as the darkness bellowed behind them, the void yearning for what it couldn't have. But as they fled, she collided with the door, jolting it open and plunging them into even deeper darkness. What they stepped into, beyond the door, was a realm of despair that would challenge every layer of their will. As the door slammed shut behind them, sealing their escape, a chilling laugh resonated through the air, filled with knowing malice. Welcome home, it whispered, echoing in the void, and Sarah realized this was far from over. What awaited them in the shadows was yet to be revealed, darker and more sinister than anything they had ever known, and the game had only just begun. The air thickened as Sarah, Mia, and Tommy stepped further into the oppressive void. The door's bang reverberated, fading into a suffocating silence. They staggered deeper into the blackness, disoriented and full of dread. What is this place? Mia's voice wavered, and Tommy clung tighter to his mother. It's just more darkness, Sarah whispered, though she felt the lie crawl uncomfortably across her tongue. Shadows flickered at the edges of her sight, strange shapes that twisted and flickered like dying flames. They advanced slowly, their footsteps muffled by an unseen layer of something wet and slick beneath blood. No. Impossible. She forced herself to breathe steadily, masking the terror threatening to rise. Movement stirred to her right, drawing her attention. Panic shot through her veins as she turned, but only the void responded. What is it? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady, fighting against the tightening in her chest. Mom, I think I heard something, Tommy spoke, trembling. Maybe it's just the house settling, she started, but her voice trailed off as the sound grew a faint giggle, eerie and childlike, echoing in chilling harmony through the darkness. The edges of Sarah's vision pulsed with black spots. We need to keep moving. She ushered her kids forward, her heart racing. Each step felt heavier than the last. The deeper they went, the more intense the whispers became, invading her mind like a swarm of biting insects. Stay close, she urged, her voice strained as they pressed forward. They entered a cavernous space, dimly lit by flickering, sickly yellow lights that barely illuminated the grimy walls. It felt like the belly of some sleeping beast, waiting to awaken. A chill crawled up Sarah's spine. Mom. Mia's voice trembled like leaves in an approaching storm. What? Sarah snapped, her patience breaking under the pressure of fear. They're over there. Mia pointed, her finger shaking. Across the room, silhouettes crawled along the walls, pale and thin, their features distorted and stretching in unnatural ways. A dreadful realization struck Sarah: they were figures. Ghostly remnants of those who had been swallowed before. Stripped of life and bowing to a master unseen. No. She hissed, yanking her children back, but they wouldn't move, entranced by the horror unfolding. The figures jerked to life, their mouths opening in silent screams. The air crackled with anguish, resonating like a chilling hymn. Sarah's heart raced. We have to go. Now. She shouted. Suddenly, a loud crash blasted from the darkness, sending debris tumbling down from the ceiling. They shrieked as dust and shadows descended around them. Run! They bolted from the room, the pulse of terror matching the thudding of their feet. But Sarah could feel the shifting beneath. The presence, stalking them, whispering sweet promises of despair. Mommy, I can't see. Tommy screamed, losing his grip. No. Grab my hand, Tommy. Hold on. She flailed in the dark, a grip of panic tightening around her heart. Behind them, the giggles crescendoed, echoing off the dilapidated walls, taunting them. It was childlike yet sinister, a sound made to haunt her forever. As they rounded corners, the path blurred, the shadows closing in, reaching out like fingers of ice. A new door appeared, cracked and decrepit, the only option for escape. In there. Sarah urged, shoving them both through. But as they stumbled inside, the door swung shut with an ominous thud behind them. They stood now in a cramped space, surrounded by what appeared to be a giant spider's web, glistening with something dark and viscous, a net waiting for its prey. The web shuddered as though something was stirring within. What is this? Mia gasped, eyes wide with horror. Suddenly, the whispering began again, this time closer, almost intimately familiar. Welcome back, it waits just for you. Sarah's gut churned with dread as a low rumble vibrated through the walls. The web shifted, pulling tighter, and she couldn't shake the growing sense of doom. Was this the end? Mom, what do we do? Tommy's voice cracked, tears spilling down his cheeks. Guided by sheer instinct, Sarah shouted, we fight. We don't let it win. But as the voices and shadows closed in, she felt the darkness constricting around them. What had they opened? As the shadows burst forth with a screech, hungry and excited, they realized this hell had just begun. What awaited them was a terrifying mystery, the threads of fate intertwined, and the truth would shatter everything they thought they knew. The air thrummed with a tension so thick it felt tangible, wrapping around Sarah, Mia, and Tommy like a heavy fog. The webbing pulsed, a sinister heartbeat echoing the dark whispers that slithered through the room. We fight. We don't let it win. Sarah shouted, desperation tightening her voice, but where to start? The shadows danced menacingly around them, a tempest of dread swirling as memories clawed at the edges of her mind, taunting and twisting. It was a reminder of every fear she had ever struggled to bury. The figures trapped in the walls shivered, their silent pleas wrapping around her heart, begging for release. Mom, what do we do? Tommy's tremor reached deep inside her, shaking her resolve. But a flicker of defiance ignited in her chest. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, it was for her children. To protect them from a legacy of fear. Then the shadows surged forward, tendrils of darkness lurching as if eager to ensnare them. Reflexively, Sarah pulled her children closer, instinctively shielding them. A sudden surge of determination washed over her like a wave of power. "Listen to me," she said, voice steadying despite the chaos. "We're not alone. We have each other." But even as the words left her lips, the dark entities cackled, their sickening laughter ringing like a funeral bell. "You think you're strong?" The voice surged from the swirling mass, cold and cruel. "You belong here, just like the others." "No," Sarah shouted back, her voice piercing the darkness. "We're not like them. We choose to fight." The intensity in her tone sent shivers through the gloom as she spotted a glimmer of light past the webs. "That way." With urgency fueling her frantic legs, she dragged her children behind her, pushing through the sticky strands that squirmed and clung to them like desperate hands. Every step felt like a battle against the pull of despair, but their bonds of love forged a way forward. They darted through the narrow passage, escape drawing them closer to the flickering light ahead. But the laughter grew louder, dark and knowing, swirling around them with a haunting anticipation. "You can't escape what is inside you, Sarah. It's always been waiting." "No," she shouted defiantly, heart pounding as she shoved through another clump of webs, sweat and tears mingling on her cheeks. Tommy was right beside her, his small frame demonstrating fierce courage, buoyed by hope. "Mom! Look!" Mia pointed to a trapdoor at the far end of the room, the light bending around its edges, promising safety. The oppressive weight of shadows pressed harder, claws biting into her thoughts, whispering doubts. "Keep moving," Sarah yelled, holding each child's hand tightly, the warmth of their fingers grounding her. They lunged toward the trapdoor, pushing it open just as the darkness lunged back. Bright light flooded the cramped space, a beacon of hope that bathed them in warmth. "Go. Now," Sarah urged, and they dove through without hesitation. They tumbled into a makeshift cellar, the daylight streaming in like a lifeline. Breathless, they pulled themselves upright, hearts racing with optimism and fear. But the shadows slammed against the door above. The echo of their vicious laughter rippling through the air stung her resolve. Mia cried out, "What if it finds us?" "The trick is to stop it from getting inside," Sarah said, eyes blazing with determination. "We have to face this together." For the first time, she kept steady, not just in body, but in spirit. She turned to her children and saw the strength reflected in their eyes, the unwavering belief that they could win. Taking a deep breath, Sarah closed her eyes and called forth her own lingering fears. "I won't allow you to control me anymore," she whispered, and the door thudded violently above as if the shadows were raging against her declaration. She opened her eyes. "Let it in, let us face this." The words resonated like thunder inside of her, igniting a fire that drove her forward. "Together," Tommy whispered, voice cracking but fierce. "Always together," Sarah affirmed. In one sweeping motion, she threw open the door. The darkness spilled in, a gaping maw filled with rage and promises of despair. But this time, she stood tall, bracing herself for the onslaught. "You will not take us," she declared, and with that, they plunged into the heart of the shadow, confronting their fears head-on, ready to reclaim their light. As the shadows swirled, crushing echoes of past nightmares morphed into a vibrant dance of courage cascading around them. Each step was a testament, a resolve woven in strength. United, they battered against the horrors that once consumed them. In that moment, the darkness hesitated, uncertainty creeping into its jagged edges. The shadows faltered, revealing fractured bits of light. And with one final push, they surged through the void, light enveloping them as they threw every ounce of love, every shred of fear behind them. It was not the end, it was the beginning of finding who they were. Slicing through what had haunted them for so long, they emerged not just as survivors but as warriors, unbound by the shadows and embracing the light that awaited. Darkness clawed at their feet but was left at the threshold, chasing ghosts with no anchor to cling to. The world outside waited, bright and unknown. They stood there, hearts heavy with remnants of the past but eyes filled with the promise of tomorrow. Together, they could face whatever was to come, knowing they had conquered demons not just in shadows, but within themselves. "Let us go home," Sarah said, looking at her children, a smile breaking across her face, illuminating everything they faced together, a fierce emblem of their indomitable spirit, and they turned, the darkness fading behind them, finally at peace. As the sun painted the sky with hues of hope, they stepped forward. A chapter closed, but the story of their defiance was only just beginning. This is your moment, dear reader. You need to subscribe now to catch more spine-tingling stories just like this one. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let us know you want more. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and reactions about this thrilling conclusion. We want to hear your theories, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who could use some chill. Your support means the world to us.